Good morning and welcome to Bible in a Year. Today we are going to be going through day 16 as we go through the Bible in 365 days. Today we continue in our period of the patriarchs. Began with the story of Abraham, and now we are all the way to his descendant Jacob. So this is his grandson. The adventure timeline we're following is put together by Jeff Cavins, and we are using the New International Version. My name is Pastor Jay Lutz, and today we are going to be covering Genesis 31 to 32, Job 21 to 22, and Proverbs 3, 9 to 12. Genesis 31 to 32, as I said, we're going to be talking about Abraham's grandson Jacob, and Jacob here in this has been living with Laban, and he's been working many years to marry his two daughters, Leah and Rachel, and now has gathered up the flocks, and he's going to leave from Laban's place. And Laban hears he is fleeing, so on the third day, he gets he follows him and catches up to him. And God warns Laban in a dream not to say anything either good or bad to Jacob. And then when they have settled their disputes, Jacob prepares himself to meet Esau, his brother. But in the meantime, he has a vision where he wrestles with God. This is one of the most important dreams and stories, I would say, of the whole Bible. The reason being is because this is where there's a huge change of events. It really epitomizes the people of Israel. And so anyways, we'll read about that. And Job 21, Job replies to Jophor, the Naamathite, a second time, and Eliphaz, the Temanite, replies to Job as well. And then lastly, we'll read Proverbs 3, 9 to 12, where Solomon talks to his son about how to honor God. So let's follow this together. Beginning with Genesis 31. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, "Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father." And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been. And the Lord said to Jacob, "Go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you." So Jacob went and sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were. He said to them, "I see what your father's attitude toward me is not what it was before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I've worked for your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he says the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks gave birth to speckled young. And if he said the streaked ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked young. So God has taken away from your father's livestock and has given them to me. Then in breeding season I once had a dream in which I looked up and I saw that the male goats mating with the flocks were streaked and speckled and spotted. The angel of God said to me in the dream, 'Jacob.' I answered, 'Here I am.' And he said, 'Look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flocks are streaked, speckled, or spotted. For I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land.' Then Rachel and Leah replied, 'Do we still have any shares in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you.' Then Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with all the goods he accumulated in Paddan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household goods. Father's household gods, not goods. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was running away. So he fled with all he had and crossed the river. He headed for the hill country of Gilead. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Taking his relatives with him, he pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream that night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead when Laban overtook him, and Laban and his relatives camped there too. Then Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You've deceived me, and you've carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me, so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of tambourines and harps? You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you, but last night the God of your father said to me, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.' Now you have gone off because you long to return to your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" Jacob answered Laban, "I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find anyone who has your gods, he shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me. And if so, take it." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the 2 maidservants. But he found nothing. After he came out of Leah's tent, he entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them inside her camel's saddle and was sitting on them. Laban searched through everything in the tent but found nothing. Rachel said to her father, "Don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm having my period." So he searched, but could not find the household gods. Jacob was angry and took Laban to task. "What is my crime?" he asked Laban. "What sin have I committed that you hunt me down? Now that you have searched through all my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Put it here in front of your relatives and mine, and let them judge between the 2 of us. I have been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself. And you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime, and the cold at night, and sheep fled from my eyes. It was like this for the 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you." Laban answered Jacob, "The women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or about the children they have borne? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I. Let it serve as a witness between us." So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. He said to his relatives, "Gather some stones," for they took stones and piled them in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jager Sahadutha, and Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." This is why it was called Galeed. It was also called Mizpah, because he said, "May the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with you, remember that God is a witness between you and me." Laban also said to Jacob, "Here's this heap, and here's this pillar I have set up between you and me." This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this heap of pillar to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us." So Jacob took an oath in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He offered a sacrifice there in the hill country, and invited his relatives to a meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night there. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters, and blessed them. Then he left and returned home. Chapter 32. Jacob also went on his way, and the angel of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named the place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, "This is what you are to say to my master Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I've been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys, sheep and goats, men servants and maidservants. Now I am sending this message to my lord that I might find favor in your eyes." When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, "We went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." In great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into 2 groups, and the flocks and herds and camels as well. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks one group, the group that is left may escape. Then Jacob prayed, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, 'Go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper.' I am unworthy of all kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I have only my staff when I cross this Jordan, but now I have become 2 groups. Save me, I pray, from the hands of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, 'I will surely make you prosper and make your descendants like the sands of the sea, which cannot be counted.'" He spent the night there, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau: 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, and 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. He put them in the care of his servants, each herd by itself, and said to his servants, "Go ahead of me and keep some space between the herds." He instructed the one in the lead, When my brother Esau meets you and asks, 'To whom do you belong and where are you going? And who owns all these animals in front of you?' Then you are to say, 'They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind us.'" He also instructed the second and the third and all who followed the herd, "You are to say the same thing to Esau when you meet him, and be sure to say your servant Jacob is coming behind us." For he thought, "I will pacify him with these gifts I am sending on ahead. Later when I see him, perhaps he will receive me." So Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, when he himself spent the night in the camp. That night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives and 2 maidservants and his 11 sons and crossed the ford of Jacob. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it's daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men, and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Therefore to this day the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. Our second reading comes from Job, chapter 21 to 22. Then Job replied, "Listen carefully to my words. Let this be the consolation you give me. Bear with me while I speak, and after I have spoken, mock on. Is my complaint directed to man? Why should I not be impatient? Look at me and be astonished. Clap your hands over your mouth. When I think about this, I am terrified. Trembling seizes my body. Why do the wicked live on, growing old and increasing in power? They see their children established around them, their offspring before their eyes. Their homes are safe and free from fear. The rod of God is not upon them. Their bulls never fail to breed. Their cows and calves do not miscarry. They send forth their children as a flock. Their little ones dance about. They sing to the music of the tambourine and the harp. They make merry to the sound of the flute. They spend their years in prosperity and go down to the grave in peace. Yet they say to God, leave us alone. We have no desire to know your ways. Who is the Almighty that we should serve him? What would we gain by praying to him? But their prosperity is not in their own hands. So I stand aloof from the counsel of the wicked. Yet how often is the lump of the wicked snuffed out? How often does calamity come upon them, the fate God allots in his anger? How often are they like straw before the wind, like a chaff swept away by the gale? It is said, God stores up the man's punishment for his sons. Let him repay the man himself, so that he will know it. Let his own eyes see his destruction. Let him drink of the wrath of the Almighty. For what does he care about the family he leaves behind, when his allotted month comes to an end? Can anyone teach knowledge to God, since he judges even the highest? One man dies in full vigor, completely secure and at ease, his body well nourished, his bones rich with marrow. Another man dies in bitterness of soul, never having enjoyed anything good. Side by side they lie in the dust, and worms cover them both. I know full well what you are thinking, the schemes by which you would wrong me. You say, where now is the great man's house and tent where wicked men lived? Have you never questioned those who travel? Have you paid no regard to their account? That the evil man is spared from the days of calamity, that he is delivered from the days of wrath, who denounces his conduct to his face, who repays him for what he has done. He is carried to the grave, and watch is kept over his tomb. The soil in the valley is sweet to him. All men follow after him, and a countless throng goes before him. So how can you console me with your nonsense? Nothing is left of your answers but falsehood. Elizabad the Temanite replies, can a man be of benefit to God? Can even a wise man benefit him? What pleasure would it give the Almighty if you were righteous? What would he gain if your ways are blameless? Is it for your piety that he rebukes you and brings charges against you? Is not your wickedness great? Are not your sins endless? You demanded security from your brothers for no reason. You stripped men of their clothing, leaving them naked. You gave no water to the weary, and you withheld food from the hungry. Though you were a powerful man, owning land and honoring man living on it, and you sent widows away empty-handed and broke the strength of the fatherless. This is why snares are all around you, why sudden peril terrifies you, why it is so dark you cannot see, and why a flood of water covers you. Is not God in the heights of the heaven? And see how lofty are the highest stars. Yet you say, what does God know? Does he judge through such darkness? Thick clouds veil him, so he does not see us, as he goes about in the vaulted heavens. Will you keep to the old path that evil men have trod? They've carried off before their time, their foundations washed away by a flood. They say to God, leave us alone. What can the Almighty do to us? Yet it was he who filled their houses with good things. So I stand aloof from the counsel of the wicked. The righteous see their ruin and rejoice. The innocent mock them, saying, surely our foes are destroyed, and fire devours their wealth. Submit to God, and be at peace with him. In this way prosperity will come to you. Accept instruction from his mouth, and lay up his words in your heart. If you return to the Almighty, you will be restored. If you remove wickedness far from your tent and assign your nuggets to the dust, your gold of Ophir to the rocks and the ravines, then the God will be your gold, the choicest silver for you. Surely then you will find delight in the Almighty and will lift up your face to God. You will pray to him and he will hear you, and you will fulfill your vows. What you decide on will be done, and light will shine on your ways. When men are brought low and you say, lift them up, then he will save the downcast. He will deliver even one who is not innocent, who will be delivered through the cleanness of your hands. Our final reading comes from Proverbs 3, verses 9 to 12. Honor the Lord your God with your wealth, with the first fruits of your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vat will brim over with new wine. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke. Because the Lord disciplines those he loves, as a father the son he delights in. Such true words of wisdom. God delights in those he loves, but he also disciplines them. And if he rebukes us, we should take it. Why? Because God is preparing us, maturing us. And how do we honor him? We honor him with our first fruits. Just like the very beginning, when Cain and Abel came forward with their offerings, that Abel gave of the choicest, the best. And that is what God requires of us also, that we give our best, not to those, just to those around us, but more so to God. Well, secondly, we hear of Job, and we hear of his reply to Jophar the Naamathite. He again tells them that even though there may be harshness that comes in many days of his life, that there will eventually be prosperity for those who trust in God, and they will sing to the music of tambourines and harps. They'll make merry to the sounds of flute. That's what at times the wicked will do, but also those who walk in the ways of God. But the difference between them, as Job says here, it says, but those who say, leave us alone, we don't desire to know the ways of the Almighty. It says prosperity is not in their hands, and they stand aloof. And so Job doesn't want to join that. Job wants to join those who seek the knowledge of God and trust in his understanding. And Eliphaz, well, he, like the other two friends, just seemed to want to badmouth Job and try to bring him down. And that's never a good approach. We should never do that as Christians, to try and break people down in order to make them feel less than, so then we can exalt over them. That's not what we're called to do. We're called to encourage one another, build one another up in the Lord. And lastly, we talk about Genesis 31 to 32, and we see this with Jacob and Laban, and Jacob has some very choice words for Laban, and Laban is rebuked not only by Jacob, but by God himself in a dream. And so just to know that God is when we walk in righteousness before God, God is on our side, in the sense that he even warns these ones that we rebuke. He many times will rebuke them as well, maybe through things like dreams or visions. And yet we continue to see the prosperity given to Jacob by his faithfulness to God, and prosperity not just in the monetary mean, but just in the way that he walks with him in his ways and his path, and so God delights in that, and so God blesses him in many ways. We see this also with his interaction with God. He wrestles with him, and I think this is the coolest part of, probably one of the coolest parts of the whole Bible, him wrestling with God. Because what happens here is God changes his name from Jacob to Israel. He is the one who cements what it is to be an Israelite. Why? Because he wrestles with God. And so everyone who claims to be an Israelite from here on out, it comes from that name, from those who wrestle with God. And we as God's people need to realize that we are to wrestle with God. The only thing that separates us apart from those who do not know God are that we wrestle with God, and that we are, as God's people, that's part of what we are to do. We are to wrestle with God about the hard issues. And Job does this. Job wrestles with his friends in this regard, and in the end he overcomes. Yeah, we'll see later that he benefits. He gets double of what he had before. Why? Because he continues to wrestle with God and the faithfulness of God, and he just doesn't see God as just this. His friends see God as a God that is wrathful and just extols out his anger because he can. Job sees that God is very much more dynamic and that he has his ways and means, but those are higher ways than ours. And so we are to wrestle with the things of God. And so my prayer for you this day is that you might wrestle with God, that you might find God where you are at, and that you might get the full knowledge of God through wrestling with his word and through prayers and visions, that you might find the true God of Israel and that you might delight in his ways to the glory of his holy name. My prayer is with you this day, and I pray that you might pray for me as we go through this Bible in a year. May God bless. Have a blessed day.